And welcome to this week's Thursday Thoughts. It is Thursday, November 14th, and we are looking at Isaiah this week. Isaiah chapters 5 and 11 this week. Last week we were in Hosea, and Hosea was a prophet. Isaiah is also a prophet, and Hosea and Isaiah are actually contemporary prophets with each other. So they were prophets about the same time, about the 8th century ish. Hosea though was in the northern kingdom, and Isaiah was in the southern kingdom. So the southern kingdom, if you'll remember from over the last couple of weeks, was only made up of two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. And it was always ruled by somebody from the David lineage. So whereas the northern kingdom went through a lot of different families and a lot of different leaders, the southern kingdom always had somebody that came from that lineage of David, right? And Isaiah, as a prophet, was called to bring the people back to God, to bring them back to faithfulness. That is the job of a prophet. And so we are reading here in chapter 5, Isaiah. It's a song that is supposed to help bring the people back, that is supposed to help them see the error of their ways and bring them back to God. And it starts off with Isaiah talking, actually, but then just a couple verses in, it actually switches to God speaking. So it gets a little confusing about who's talking here, but Isaiah is starting out, and he is singing a song for his beloved, which is God. And so we're gonna read first in Isaiah chapter 5. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it out of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine vat in it. He expected it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. And now, inhabitants of Jerusalem and people of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have not done? When I expected it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its wall, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste. It shall not be pruned or hoed, and it shall be overgrown with briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds, that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. He expected justice, but saw bloodshed, righteousness, but heard a cry. So we're going to stop there before we read chapter 11 and start talking about chapter 11. Let's talk about chapter 5 kind of on its own. So at first, in the very beginning, we have Isaiah singing a song for God about God as a gardener, God as the person who planted the vineyard and prepped the vineyard and prepared the vineyard and did everything possible so that the vineyard would yield good grapes, would yield grapes that would make wine. Yet wild grapes came about, and wild grapes were not good. They could not be made for wine. So instead, God is disappointed and sad. God did everything God could do with these vines in order for them to bring about good fruit. And it didn't happen. And then in verse 3, it switches to actually God talking in verses 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And God is saying, what more could I have done? I did everything I could do. So is it my fault that it yielded bad fruit? Or does it have to do with the vines? I did everything I could. What else do you want me to do? And so God goes on then to say, I'm done. I did everything I could do, and I'm done now. I'm no longer putting my time and my energy and my resources into this vineyard when I know no matter what, this vineyard is going to yield bad grapes. So God simply takes down the fence that God put up. God stops watering it. God stops taking care of the weeds. God stops protecting it. Because why is God going to put time and energy into these vines when these vines are going to yield bad grapes, no matter what God does. I'm sure some gardeners have been here, have felt this. In fact, I know that my father in law, if a plant doesn't do well for a couple of years, he eventually just stops planting it altogether. Why is he going to bother trying when it doesn't work? It's also kind of when your tomatoes get that blight or that tomato disease that makes them go bad. Um, Eventually, you just give up, right? I've tried everything possible to save these tomatoes, and it's not worth my time and my energy. So I'm just gonna stop. I'm just gonna stop watering them. I'm gonna stop taking care of them. I'm gonna stop weeding them. I'm gonna stop trying because no matter what I do, they're gonna be bad tomatoes. That's how God is feeling about these grapes. I did everything possible and they still were wild, bad grapes. But it goes on to say that for the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the people of Judah are his pleasant planting. So the vineyard in this imagery here is the nation of Israel, the people of Judah. It is God's chosen people. God has done everything possible for them to be good, fruit yielding people. And instead, they yield bad grapes, bad fruit. And God doesn't know what more God can do to get the people of Israel to yield good fruit, which here we have as justice and righteousness. That is the good fruit that God expected to come from God's vineyard. Yet all God sees is bloodshed and crying. And God is saying, I'm done. Isaiah is telling the people, God's done. God is done putting God's time and energy and effort into you when it's nothing but bloodshed and crime. God did all of this so that you would be just and righteous people. And it did no good. You continue to yield bad fruit. You continue to cause bloodshed and tears. So God's done. What more could God have done? That's a pretty bleak thing happening here. That's a pretty harsh reality to hear. But I think it's understandable. I sympathize with God. Sometimes there's only so much we can do. And sometimes the only thing left to do is say, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I've done everything I possibly can, and I have to stop. I think a question that comes for me from this text is, at what point are we beginning to enable people? Because I really feel that here, that God has done everything possible, but these people are still choosing injustice and unrighteousness. And at what point is God just enabling them to continue choosing unjust ways and living unrighteously? So this is a bleak section in Isaiah of saying, God's done. God did all God could do in Israel, Judah. You're still yielding bad fruit. So God's done. But then it goes on. The organizers of the narrative lectionary, I guess, didn't want us to just end on that very difficult note. And so instead, they throw in chapter 11, verses 1-5. A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. So here we switch gears entirely. In verse 5, we have God has given up, God is done. In verse 11, we have, but God will fix this. God will bring about the justice and righteousness that God intended. And God will do it by a shoot out of the stump of Jesse, a branch out of his roots. So Jesse is in that lineage of David before David, and God is going to bring about somebody from that lineage to make sure justice and righteousness happen. So yes, God is done with you, Israel, but not really. God really can't do that. God's going to make this right. God has put too much time and energy and effort into the people of Israel to actually be done, I think. And so God is going to make this right. God is going to bring about that justice and that righteousness that God works so hard to create. God is going to make sure that there is equity on the earth, that there is wisdom, that there is righteousness. So we have kind of two very different texts. We have the first text that says, I'm done, and the second text that says, I'm going to bring about justice and righteousness. I kind of like to imagine it as, just watch me. It's going to happen. So there's a lot in these texts that we could talk about. But the thing that I've been kind of thinking about the most is the relationship of God to the people of Israel. So here we have God as the keeper of the vineyard and Israel as the vineyard. So God is kind of gardener and Israel is kind of plant. But we have lots of other ways of relating God and the people of Israel that we find in the Bible and that we've just used over time throughout theology and tradition. So if we think more about the Old Testament, we have bride and bridegroom. That's a really common analogy that we hear pretty frequently. We also, if we look more at the New Testament, for the most part, I mean, there's a little bit in the Old Testament too, but we have sheep and shepherd. God is the shepherd, and we are God's sheep. The nation of Israel is God's sheep. And so there's images that we look at of how do we understand God's relationship to the people. So in Hosea last week, we understood God as mother or parent, and Israel as child. And so there's lots of ways to look at this relationship between God and people. And the question I've been pondering is what image most resonates with me? What image or analogy of God in relation to people and people in relation to God most resonates with me? So we talked a little bit about this at youth group on Wednesday. And some of the other ones that were brought up were teacher student, kind of guide and follower. And so we talked about which one most resonates with me, with each of us. And that was a question we asked. And I've been thinking about that with myself. And I gave one answer on Wednesday night. And I liked that answer. But as I've been thinking about this, I'm not sure that's the answer I would choose all the time. And I'm not sure I would choose the same answer all the time either. I feel like at different moments in my life, I relate to God in different ways. Tonight, I'm struck in particular by the texts that talk about God carrying the heavy burden. That God will, kind of be the one who takes on our burdens. Be the one who deals with those burdens so we can walk easily. My relationship with my husband, I frequently call him my pack mule because he carries everything for me. And that's kind of the image of God that's really resonating with me tonight. When we're exhausted and we can't walk a step further with the burdens we're carrying, God being the one who takes those so that we can have our load lightened, so that our yoke can be easy. So I'm wondering what image, what analogy of God relating to people and people relating to God strikes you most? What one is fitting for you and your relationship with God right now at this moment? And it might not be tomorrow or might not be 2 weeks from now, but right now at this moment, um, what what strikes you? How would you explain your relationship? Are you a sheep and God the shepherd? Are you a student and God the teacher? Are you the child and God's the loving mother? How are you and God in relationship right now? I would love to know that. I would love if you would answer that in our comment section. Um, I would love to just hear some of those things. So I I want to close tonight um, with a prayer, and I'm pulling it up on my iPad here. Um, so I have a adult discipleship study that goes along with the narrative lectionary, um, and it talks about having um, the group pray the Lord's Prayer as a closing if you were to meet in a group study. And I like that idea. But it offers a different translation. And I want to read that translation to you of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are, set the world right, do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. I want to read that one more time. And I would like you just to shut your eyes and to let the words wash over you. And I want you to just take it in, breathe deep, and soak the words into your being. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. So I'm going to read that again. And this time, I want you to pay attention to any phrase or word that jumps out at you, that just kind of pops into your mind and sticks, that sparkles as we read it. Maybe might be a way to explain it. What jumps out to you? What word or phrase? Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. So, what word or phrase stuck out to you? Jot it down. Better yet, type it in the comments right now. What word or phrase popped out to you? For me, it was keep us safe from ourselves. Keep us safe from ourselves. So I'm going to read it again. And this time, I want you to think about and pray about and be open to what God is trying to speak to you through this text. What is God trying to say to you? Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best. As above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. So, what is God speaking to you? What is God trying to say to you through this text? For me, I'm still struck by that keep us safe from ourselves. Sometimes I think we're our own worst enemy. And for me in particular, I think that's true. And I think God is trying to keep my eyes open to that. So I'm going to read it one more time. And this time, I want you to think about what God is calling you to do, to live out because of this text. What is God calling you to live, to do through this text? Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best. So above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze and beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. What is God calling you to do? What is God calling you to live out? Now, as I close our time together, I'm going to read a line and it's going to gradually get shorter and shorter. As it gets shorter and shorter, I want you to release everything back to God. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you. Our Father in heaven, reveal who. Our Father in heaven, reveal. Our Father in heaven, our Father. Amen. Thank you for joining me this week for Thursday Thoughts. And I look forward to continuing our conversation through the comments here on our YouTube channel and also in church Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Join us for worship as we continue to talk about Isaiah chapters 5 and 11. Have a great Thursday night.